Have you ever considered the possibility that all the knowledge transmitted to you about finances is fundamentally flawed? Even irrationally so. Consider my perspective. Billions of individuals spend their entire lives studying, toiling tirelessly, dedicating their time, well-being, and loved ones, and yet, they end their days without ever experiencing genuine abundance. Does this scenario make sense? Clearly, it doesn't. The most unsettling aspect is observing that the harder they strive, the more scarcity they seem to attract. I'm not talking about mere conjecture, but about the hidden law that governs every part of the cosmos. A law that is operating in your life right now, even if you're unaware of it. And on this occasion, I will reveal 12 clear steps to reshape your thinking and rapidly attract abundance. Have you ever noticed how certain assertions, heard since childhood, transform into unquestionable truths within us, even without ever being challenged? Money doesn't grow on trees. To succeed in life, you must suffer. We weren't born to accumulate wealth. These declarations propagate from generation to generation and end up becoming a silent programming that shapes our relationship with money. It's not a deliberate choice, it's something that settles into the subconscious and begins to guide decisions, behaviors, and even how we react to opportunities. You might even suppose that your difficulty in prospering stems from a lack of education, connections, or luck, but in reality, the root lies in this imperceptible conditioning that dictates how much you believe you deserve and how much you allow yourself to receive. It's like a computer program running in the background. You don't see it, but it controls the entire system. For this reason, no matter how many extra hours you work, how many certificates you acquire, or how much determination you put into your ventures, if the installed programming is one of deprivation, the outcome will invariably be the same. Have you noticed how many individuals manage to increase their income for a period, but soon return to a state of financial struggle? This happens because they didn't change the software, they merely altered the scenery. And when the program isn't rewritten, sooner or later it re-establishes the same pattern. I myself experienced this cycle firsthand. I spent years convinced that the only way to overcome my difficulties was to work harder. Always exhausted, always searching, and never truly progressing. No matter how much money came in, it seemed something always went wrong, an unexpected expense, a new debt, a loss I couldn't avoid. It was only when I began to question these ingrained beliefs, these phrases echoing within me, that I understood the problem wasn't in the external world, but in the images and ideas I cultivated within myself. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between reality and repetition. If you hear daily that money is hard-earned, or that it's not for everyone, sooner or later you manifest exactly that. And when you emit the frequency of scarcity, life has no choice but to respond with more scarcity. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you reiterated, even without realizing it, that there's never anything left at the end of the month? How many times have you claimed that you're not good at business, that you weren't born for it, or that people like you will never get rich? This constant internal dialogue is what constructs your financial reality. Contemporary studies on behavior demonstrate that a vast majority of our daily decisions are automatic, unconscious. This means that, inadvertently, you might be reproducing the same patterns that your parents and grandparents carried throughout their lives, even if you rationally desire different outcomes. The true origin of deprivation doesn't reside in the numbers on your bank statement, but in what you consider possible. Imagine someone who inherits a scarcity mindset but wins millions of dollars in the lottery. Without altering their mental program, they soon return to the same point, because they haven't learned to vibrate abundance, they merely received money without being prepared for it. This has happened countless times throughout history, and it's proof that money itself isn't the solution, the mindset is. So, if up until now you've felt trapped in this cycle of chasing, working hard, and never seeing a lasting result, know that it's not the fault of the government, the economic climate, or a lack of opportunities. It's the invisible programming that governs your life. And until you question it, until you decide to write a new internal narrative, the external outcome won't change. The first step is to recognize this. Recognize that within you there's an old, inherited, reiterated voice that insists on telling you that you can't, that you don't deserve it, that you weren't born to prosper. And that voice needs to be silenced. Because only when you replace this pattern, only when you decide to install a new programming of abundance, will reality begin to genuinely and permanently transform. Everything in the universe is in constant oscillation. Every atom, every cell, every particle carries a frequency, and you are no different. Your thoughts, your emotions, and even your most subtle feelings emit a vibration that creates a kind of invisible field around you. This field functions like a magnet, attracting circumstances, individuals, and opportunities that are in tune with the energy you sustain. When your vibration is one of fear, anxiety, and scarcity, life inevitably responds by bringing more situations that reflect exactly that. It's no coincidence that so often you manage to pay off one debt only to discover, days later, that a new unexpected expense has arisen. This pattern isn't bad luck, it isn't punishment, it's the direct manifestation of the frequency you radiate. Think of it like a radio station. You can only hear the melody that corresponds to the frequency you're tuned into. If your mind is incessantly tuned to the channel of worry, of "it won't work out," of "I never succeed," then that's the music that will keep playing in your life. That's why even people who overexert themselves, who work to the point of exhaustion, continue to attract more lack, more effort, and more scarcity. Their vibration isn't aligned with abundance, but with toil, sacrifice, and limitation. I myself spent years without understanding this. I observed individuals around me who, apparently, didn't work as much as I did, but achieved much more significant results. It consumed me. I wondered, how is this possible? I dedicate more, spend more hours, sacrifice more, and yet they seem to prosper with ease. The answer lay in vibration. They didn't vibrate need, they vibrated conviction. They didn't vibrate fear of loss, they vibrated the certainty that there would always be more. This confidence created a natural alignment with prosperous situations, while I, trapped by the fear of lack, could only attract more of the same. Perhaps you, too, have experienced this feeling of spinning in circles. You work, you strive, you search incessantly, but every time you believe something will finally be left over, an urgency arises, an unforeseen expense, an obstacle that drains your resources. It's as if you're captive in an invisible cycle. And the truth is, you are. An energetic cycle fed by your dominant vibration. Research indicates that emotions like fear and apprehension activate a state of restricted focus in the brain, which prevents us from seeing solutions and opportunities that are right in front of us. In other words, when you vibrate fear, you not only attract more situations of fear but also become blind to the doors that could change your reality. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine starting to vibrate abundance even before it materializes. Instead of thinking, "I can never pay my bills," you start to feel internally, "I am capable, I deserve abundance, and the right opportunities are coming to me." This vibration opens your eyes to new concepts, makes you notice individuals who were previously overlooked, connects you to circumstances that were there all along, but which your old frequency didn't allow you to see. That's how life responds. It doesn't matter where you are, what your occupation is, your background, or your current conditions. What defines your next chapter is the vibration you choose to sustain now. And here's a crucial aspect: your vibration doesn't change merely through logical reasoning. You can verbalize, "I want prosperity," all day long, but if deep down you feel fear, apprehension, and guilt, that's what you continue to emit. Vibration is determined by the emotion that accompanies the thought. That's why it's so important to cultivate feelings of gratitude, confidence, and certainty. Gratitude, in particular, is one of the most potent frequencies because it brings you into alignment with what is already good in your life, and this alignment makes space for more good things to emerge. Money is just one manifestation, among many, of the universe's energy. And just like any energy, it responds to what you transmit. When you vibrate scarcity, it dissipates. When you vibrate abundance, it flows. The question is, which station have you been tuned into? On one occasion, I found myself at a complete crossroads. There was an expense to pay, and upon checking my wallet, the amount present wasn't sufficient. A situation like that, in earlier times, would plunge me into deep despair. My heart would pound, my mind would start to envision every imaginable difficulty, and an overwhelming feeling of helplessness would dominate me. However, at that moment, I opted for a different approach. Instead of radiating fear, instead of dwelling on the thought that this won't work out, I chose to place my faith. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and declared to myself that the resources would arrive, even if I didn't know the way. I made sure to fully embrace this perception, as if the challenge had already been overcome. And then, something manifested that, to this day, still amazes me with the clarity of its communication. A few hours later, the phone rang. On the other end of the line was someone who had owed me money for several years, someone I had long given up hope of ever hearing from again. Without offering any excuses, this person informed me that they had decided to settle the debt precisely that day. The exact amount sent to me was precisely what I needed to meet the commitment that had been troubling me. Some might attribute this to coincidence, but I've learned to recognize when our frequency establishes a connection with the cosmos. It wasn't luck, it was a harmonization. This event marked a turning point, for it tangibly showed me that my inner resonance possesses the ability to alter external circumstances. Up until that moment, I had been convinced that financial well-being came from hard work, strategic connections, and propitious situations. However, on that day it became clear that when our thoughts and feelings harmonize with abundance, life responds with exactness. This doesn't mean wealth miraculously materializes, but rather that it arrives through unpredictable channels, via individuals and opportunities that were already present on our path, merely awaiting our vibrational alignment to manifest. How many times have you encountered a similar scenario? Bills piling up, no apparent way out, and then suddenly help emerges, a pending payment arrives, an opportunity that once seemed unattainable appears. The distinction lies in the fact that, often, you attribute such occurrences to fortune or pure chance, when, in reality, it's your frequency that enables access to those solutions. The unfortunate truth is that, most of the time, your actions are counterproductive, you succumb to panic, you radiate distress, and this very posture only obstructs the path that could otherwise open up. By choosing trust, it was as if I had sent an unequivocal message to the cosmos, I am ready to receive. And the universe responded. This is the heart of the matter. You don't control the form or the origin, but you do control what you emanate. And what you emit either opens or closes doors. My case of the unexpected resource settling a debt might seem minor, but it was enough for me to understand that this principle is genuine and operates in any dimension. If it's effective for a debt of a few $100s, it also applies to ventures involving millions of dollars. The primary distinction lies in the consistency of your frequency. On that day, I assimilated a principle that completely altered my connection with finances. It's not about having the answer in plain sight, but rather about being in alignment with the certainty that the solution will present itself. For when you emanate scarcity, all you can perceive are obstacles. However, by emitting abundance, you begin to notice paths that previously remained imperceptible. This was merely the first of countless occurrences in which life demonstrated to me that by modifying my energy, I transformed the outcomes. And that is the cornerstone for any lasting financial metamorphosis. How many individuals do you know who wake before dawn, dedicate more hours than their physical capacity allows, sacrifice weekly rest, holidays, and family time, and yet, despite all of it, remain entangled in debts, anxieties, and a lack of prospects? Perhaps you yourself have questioned why, even with such immense dedication, the rewards don't materialize. And, at the same time, it's impossible not to notice people who seem to lead a more serene existence, who work for a fewer number of hours, and yet still enjoy a trajectory of abundance, financial stability, and autonomy. It's as if they are engaged in an entirely different endeavor. And, indeed, they are. The primary discrepancy does not lie in the magnitude of physical exertion, but in the excellence of the cognitive and emotional resonance they carry daily. For a long period, I too was convinced that material success was simply a correlation of dedication. Work more, earn more. Yet, life persistently demonstrated to me that this tenet was mistaken. I would exhaust myself, sacrifice endlessly, and still always seem to be one step behind. The reality is that when the mind radiates deprivation, even an increase in income, even an unexpected windfall, even a larger opportunity ultimately dissipates. Because it is not labor that engenders prosperity, but frequency. You can sweat, struggle, pile up work days, and if your emanation is one of dread, uncertainty, or it will never be enough, that is precisely what will perpetuate itself. The scientific community corroborates this assertion. Studies on emotions demonstrate that when an individual is in a state of tension or anxiety, the brain activates a self-preservation system that restricts attention. It's as if the mind employs a lens that only perceives obstacles, dangers, and threats. In this condition, you cease to discern opportune moments, you don't envision solutions, and you miss connections that could transform your existence. In essence, the frequency of deprivation not only magnetizes more scarcity but also incapacitates you from perceiving everything that could lead to abundance. And the opposite is equally true. When you cultivate a frequency of conviction, security, and appreciation, your mind expands its capacity for perception. It is in this state that you begin to identify individuals capable of opening new perspectives, ideas that were once overlooked, alternatives that were right in front of you but which your previous resonance prevented you from seeing. The external environment remains unchanged, however, your way of viewing and interacting with it completely transforms. This clarifies why some individuals, even without dedicating so many hours to work, seem to amplify their successes. They are connected to a level of discernment that only reveals itself when you emanate abundance. I recall observing entrepreneurs who managed to expand their businesses almost instinctively, while others, with identical dedication, struggled merely to sustain their operations. The disparity was not in the sheer effort, but in the way they emanated their energy. Those who flourished held the conviction that resources, clients, and opportunities would always emerge, and this steadfast belief provided the ideal context for such manifestations. Conversely, those who radiated apprehension were incessantly busy, perpetually exhausted, eternally striving, yet never progressed. This occurred because they were attuned to the force of struggle, and struggle only attracts more confrontation. Therefore, if until now you've convinced yourself that the solution to your financial challenges lies solely in intensifying your labor, it's imperative to understand that this is the most exhausting and least rewarding path. This isn't to discredit the importance of occupation. But physical effort devoid of the appropriate resonance merely transmutes into fatigue. Abundance begins in the mental sphere, in alignment with opulence, in the feeling that you are deserving and that an unlimited current of possibilities already exists in your experience. When this emanation becomes predominant within you, work ceases to be a struggle and transforms into a spontaneous conduit through which abundance can reveal itself. And existence reacts to this with scenarios, interactions, and outcomes that seem implausible to those who still believe that only sweat is fruitful. Elvis Presley served as a clear paradigm of how the mere possession of capital does not guarantee well-being. He was among the highest-paid performers on the planet, garnered universal notoriety, and lived surrounded by luxury and opportunities that few individuals can even conceive. Yet, despite all the money that passed through his hands, his trajectory culminated in financial obstacles, emotional instability, and decisions that led him to ruin. The unavoidable question is, how could a man who acquired millions of dollars end up this way? The explanation lies in what was occurring within him. Elvis never reconfigured his mindset to retain his fortune. He radiated fear, uncertainty, and deprivation, even when wealth appeared to manifest in profusion. This internal configuration is powerful, as it demonstrates that, regardless of the size of one's fortune or the opportunity, if consciousness is not harmonized with progress, abundance does not endure. Capital may flow in, but it also finds ways to drain away, whether through extravagance, inadequate management, detrimental relationships, or even dependencies that emerge from the urge to fill an inner void. Elvis emanated scarcity, radiated disharmony, and the outcome was precisely this, an existence punctuated by ascents and declines, in which money never truly managed to confer authentic stability. This paradigm should prompt us to deep introspection. How many times have you imagined that if you received a substantial sum of money unexpectedly, all your dilemmas would be resolved? But, one must ask, would they truly be? Research indicates that most individuals who win lotteries return to their pre-existing economic condition within a few years. This happens because the mind was not prepared to sustain abundance. The inner resonance of scarcity persists, and this frequency finds ways to undermine even the greatest achievements. It's easy to think that financial well-being boils down to the monetary amount one receives, but Elvis reveals the opposite. Prosperity is, in essence, a matter of perspective and vibrational frequency. He had everything on the outside, but deep within, he harbored uncertainties, fears, and self-limiting habits. An inner strength always prevails. It is this strength that shapes what materializes in the external environment. This paradigm also reminds us that it is not enough to seek enrichment superficially, accumulating income without transforming what is happening within us. If there isn't a vibrational alignment with abundance, financial resources do not provide serenity, do not confer stability, and certainly not contentment. The frequency of scarcity will always find a way to manifest itself, whether in wastefulness, poor choices, or draining relationships. Elvis is a vivid representation of this condition, an individual who enjoyed everything, yet lacked the mental framework to sustain anything he acquired. Therefore, when looking at your own life, it is crucial to understand that true well-being is not what is provisionally gained, but rather what one manages to retain because their vibrational frequency is in consonance with that state. It's not enough just to acquire, one must learn to preserve. And this only happens when your core is reconditioned to believe that you are worthy, that you are capable, that abundance is inherent, and that it is not based on fear, excess, or domination. What devastated Elvis was not a lack of aptitude, opportune occasions, or financial resources, but the absence of a mental disposition capable of converting wealth into something perennial. Oprah Winfrey is the palpable evidence that genuine transformation begins within. She came into the world in a context of deep poverty, neglected and affected by painful experiences from a tender age. All the circumstances surrounding her indicated a future of failure. If she had believed what the world presented, she might have repeated the same narrative of penury as so many individuals close to her. But Oprah did something that completely altered the trajectory of her existence. She chose to readjust her vibrational frequency even before she had any external indication that she could flourish. When deprived of everything, she chose to vibrate as if she already enjoyed abundance. When no one had faith, she believed in her own capacity. This is the crux of the matter. Well-being is not what is achieved later, it is what is maintained internally beforehand. Oprah assimilated this instinctively. She began to act, reflect, and feel like someone who already resided in opulence, even when there was absolutely nothing in her surroundings to ratify that condition. This deliberation generated such a powerful energetic harmony that the cosmos responded. Currently, she is a woman with a fortune exceeding $1 billion, and not just in numerical statistics, but in influence, impact, and autonomy. Not because she was lucky or born into a privileged environment, but because she determined to alter the frequency she emanated. And perhaps you wonder, how is it feasible to emit abundance when existence only reveals setbacks? The answer is uncomplicated, yet it demands courage. One must choose to believe in what is not seen before the tangible changes. The reality you experience today is merely a mirror of past frequencies. If you desire a different future, you must transform your energetic resonance right now, even if everything around you screams the opposite. Oprah is a paradigm that motivates by demonstrating that your origin doesn't matter, only where you choose to resonate matters. And it is here that I wish to extend a call to you. If up to this point what has been shared resonates with your understanding, if you perceive that this communication is touching something within you, then press the like button and subscribe immediately. This simple action generates a vigorous current so that a greater number of individuals receive this material and begin to awaken to the essence of abundance. By doing so, you not only strengthen this collective of transformation, but you also send an unequivocal indication to yourself that you are committed to altering your own frequency. Remember, the resolution to prosper is invariably internal. It is not necessary to wait for the external environment to improve in order to resonate with abundance. It is enough to determine that the faculty to generate, attract, and preserve well-being already resides within your being. Oprah demonstrated this to the world. And if she succeeded, starting from scratch, you are also capable. Everything begins with the frequency you choose to maintain right now. Many people harbor a veiled fear regarding financial resources, as if these represented something risky, capable of corrupting or separating them from what is integral. How often have you heard that monetary means transform people? Or that, the wealthy are greedy? Such expressions, reiterated countless times, forge an adverse connection so deeply rooted that, even while aspiring to flourishing, one may be unconsciously repelling it. It's as if a part of your individuality aspires to more, but another part is obstructing it, fearful of what that might imply. And the cosmos always reacts to what prevails within you. The fear of monetary resources is among the greatest impediments to abundance, as it induces the individual to believe that prospering means risking losing something even more precious: their nature, their principles, their relationships. This inner conflict generates an antagonistic resonance. On one hand, there is the conscious aspiration to possess more, to build an improved existence. On the other, there persists the subconscious apprehension that, should this materialize, envy, criticism, estrangement, or even remorse will arise. This type of fear builds an imperceptible barrier, a kind of crystalline limit that the individual can never transcend. I have witnessed individuals reject obvious chances for progress simply because, deep down, they convinced themselves that they did not fit the profile of someone who managed finances well. I have observed people who, upon entering a period of prosperity, invariably found ways to dissipate everything, as if they could not maintain a higher existence without the feeling of betraying something within them. This demonstrates the paralyzing power of fear. And the question is, would the problem reside in monetary resources? Or would the issue be in the way we were taught to conceive of them? Finances, in themselves, lack morality. They are neither beneficial nor pernicious. They merely intensify what is already within your being. If you are magnanimous, you will have more means to be even more generous. If you are ingenious, you will have more resources to expand your inventiveness. If you are someone with solid principles, you will be in a better position to influence the world constructively. Research in the field of psychology shows that the emotional bond we establish with capital is often inherited. If you grew up in a context where finances were a source of strife, scarcity, and affliction, there is a considerable probability that, subconsciously, you still link money to anguish. This emotional recollection leads you to push away what you consciously desire. However, when you understand that capital is not the antagonist, that it is merely an energy that reacts to your frequency, something changes. You begin to view financial resources as a partner, an enhancer of your intentions. Now, ponder, on how many occasions have you verbalized or thought that you do not need a large amount to be happy? This expression appears modest, but it often conceals the fear of desiring more and not obtaining it, or the dread of acquiring and then losing it. It is a protective mechanism. However, the reality is that there is no mistake in aspiring to flourishing. The error lies in believing that capital will annihilate your identity. Financial resources do not alter your nature, they merely expand your frequency. Therefore, what needs transformation is not capital, but the way you connect with it. By initiating the substitution of the conviction that monetary resources pervert with the certainty that they amplify what is already highest within your being, your vibrational frequency changes. And, by changing, you create space to attract without remorse, without fear, and without impediments. Finances cease to be something threatening to become an instrument of amplification. And it is precisely at this moment that abundance begins to flow spontaneously, because you are no longer fighting it, but rather allowing it to find in you a propitious refuge to develop. I wish to present something to you that, at first glance, may seem so trivial that your cognition will reject it. And precisely because it sounds excessively simple, many give up before experiencing the genuine power that permeates it. Over the next 7 days, daily, write down the following sentence 10 times on a sheet of paper: capital flows to me with ease and constancy. Only that. But execute it with purpose, with mindfulness, as if each word were a seed cultivated in the soil of your psyche. Possibly, right in the first few attempts, you may feel unease. Perhaps an inner voice will assert, "This is a falsehood, this is not happening to me, I am just deluding myself." This impediment doesn't indicate that the approach is ineffective, it demonstrates that you are confronting the limits of old convictions deeply rooted within you. And this is precisely where the essence lies. Most individuals, when faced with such an obstacle, cease their efforts. They give up. They proclaim, "This doesn't work." And, consequently, they revert to old habits, to the same financial struggles, to the incessant cycle of difficulties. However, if you persist, if you dedicate yourself to reiterating, to journaling, to experiencing, gradually your subconscious mind will begin to consider this conception as feasible. It resembles the installation of a brand new operating system within you. Reflect on this: you've spent decades nurturing restrictive beliefs, sayings like, "Making money requires sacrifice," "Prosperity doesn't belong to me, only the fortunate achieve success." Such expressions were etched through incessant repetitions. And the only way to replace a mental program is through a new iteration, a new narrative that, over time, supersedes and surpasses the predecessor. During the initial stages, it's likely that no changes will manifest in your external reality. And it is at this point that countless people succumb to the trap of doubt. However, if you remain resolute, a subtle metamorphosis takes effect. You begin to notice that thinking about finances no longer provokes the same tightness in your chest, nor does it engender the same fear. A distinct feeling emerges, a sense of security. And, of conviction. This subtle emotional shift is colossal, for the energetic frequency you radiate changes. It is at this moment that new avenues begin to appear. An unexpected call, an opportunity you had never perceived, an old debt that is suddenly paid off. You might attribute it to mere coincidences, but, in essence, it is the precise reaction to the new frequency you have begun to propagate. Now, imagine this: for a period of 7 days, you dedicate yourself to this simple practice, journaling, realizing, visualizing. And, on the 8th day, upon retrospective analysis, you notice that something has changed within you. Whether minuscule or monumental, there has been an alteration. And this is the indication that the essence has begun to sprout. I experienced such a reality intensely. There was a phase when it was impossible for me to accumulate financial resources in any way. Even if my income increased, adversities arose with the same intensity. Only when I set myself the challenge of transcribing sentences of abundance daily did a behavioral pattern begin to dissolve. Initially, it seemed like an insignificant pastime, but one day, I noticed that I felt different, more relaxed, as if a burden had been removed from my shoulders. And it was precisely during this phase that proposals, ventures, and monetary values began to manifest in contexts I would never have conceived. For this reason, I emphasize, embrace this experiment. It's not merely about writing for writing's sake, but about building a renewed inner perception, a brand new feeling. Do this for 7 consecutive days, 10 times every 24 hours. Do not omit, do not transgress. Just undertake it and witness the results. For this seemingly simple exercise is, in fact, the most effective way to instruct your deep psyche to embrace what your conscious intellect desires. And, when both coexist in alignment, the cosmos has no alternative but to respond. Ultimately, you do not attract what you crave, you attract what you profess. And, from the moment you profess that resources come to you naturally and regularly, they will indeed come. Conceive, at this moment, the sensation of waking up serenely, free from the burden of anxiety regarding financial obligations, noticing that flows of resources emerge from previously imperceptible avenues. Foresee possessing the freedom to decide how to employ your time, with whom to share your presence, where to travel, without the threat of scarcity. Such an existence begins with an elementary activity. For 7 days. 10 daily repetitions. Journal, feel, and inhabit as if it were already a reality. And observe the universe orchestrate itself in your favor. On one occasion, I found myself needing to pay off a debt and, quite simply, lacked the required amount. The most expected reaction would be to give in to panic, to experience embarrassment, fear, or even indignation. That's exactly how I usually acted. I would complain, blame the global situation, convince myself there was no escape. However, on that day, I chose to proceed differently. Instead of nourishing despair, I took a deep breath and visualized, I will place my faith, the resources will manifest. And, believe me, within a few hours, I received a phone call from someone who had owed me money for years. That amount was no longer part of my projections, I didn't even remember it. And, nevertheless, it appeared precisely at the moment it was indispensable. Numerous individuals would classify this as chance, however, I assimilated to discern that it was not that. It was the immediate result of a renewed energetic frequency. The moment I ceased to align myself with fear, I abandoned the emission of apprehension and began to radiate security. Existence found a way to react to me. And so it operates incessantly. When you project scarcity, events seem to conspire against you. The tire goes flat, the refrigerator breaks down, an unforeseen expense suddenly emerges. Have you noticed how such obstacles always manifest in a chain reaction, as if they intended to confirm that the journey is arduous? This is not misfortune, this is resonance. It is your inner power declaring, I am prepared for more deprivation, and the cosmos simply approves. From now on, by shifting your frequency, even if external conditions remain unchanged, you begin to open yourself to alternatives that previously went unnoticed. That person you never had the courage to contact unexpectedly comes to your mind. A chance that was right in front of you all along finally catches your attention. The buyer who invariably declined resumes contact. These facts do not emerge from a vacuum, they were always present, but your perception was obscured, held back by fear. I remember entire nights awake, pondering how to pay the next month's expenses. It felt like a persistent burden on my chest, as if breathing were insufficient. And the more I worried, the more adversities arose. It was a sequence that restricted me for years. Until I understood, it is not the obstacle that holds you captive, but rather your response to it. When you react with distress, you reiterate the same vibrational frequency. By choosing to trust, even without envisioning a solution, you create space for something different to materialize. And here is the most impactful insight: when I placed faith in that moment, it wasn't just about the financial obligation being paid. It was about a profound lesson. I understood that I no longer needed to exist dominated by apprehension. It was as if a tie had come undone within me. I realized, for the first time, that external circumstances don't dictate what happens to me. It is my energetic resonance that sets the direction. And this perception generated not only relief, but also courage. Because if a simple gesture of trust could catalyze an unforeseen response, then I could incorporate this as a way of life. It is possible that you have already experienced similar circumstances. Piled up expenses, seemingly endless liabilities, moments when you felt cornered. However, consider, on how many occasions, suddenly, something presented itself and you succeeded in solving it. The distinction lies in the fact that, most of the time, you interpreted it as good fortune, as coincidence, and did not realize that it was the unfolding of your changing energy, even if for a few minutes. Imagine if, instead of trusting for a few minutes, you were capable of maintaining that condition daily. Visualize the number of solutions that would manifest before you. Existence does not react to hard work, it reacts to frequency. When you emit fear, the surrounding environment appears to corroborate the presence of reasons for anxiety. When you emanate security, everything begins to harmonize to attest to the validity of your faith. This is why some seem to live under a constant storm, while others, even when facing identical setbacks, discern the light amidst the darkness. It is not chance, it is an energetic choice. And this choice is possible at any moment, including this very instant. Faced with every scenario that emerges, you can ask yourself, will I respond with apprehension, or will I choose to place my faith? Because, with each decision, you propagate a frequency to the cosmos. And the cosmos never fails to return precisely what you radiate. This is what transformed my existence on that day when I determined not to worry. And this is what has the potential to transform yours, on all occasions when you choose trust, even when it appears impossible. The scientific community has already confirmed that your perception of financial resources modifies how your brain processes reality. Research in psychoanalysis and neurosciences demonstrates that, when you are in a state of continuous tension or fear, your brain adopts a regime called restricted selective focus. In this condition, you only perceive the problems, the uncertainties, and the threats. It's as if there is a barrier that prevents solutions, that closes off the horizon to opportunities. Conversely, when you find yourself in a state of certainty, recognition, or a positive outlook, your brain stimulates areas linked to inventiveness and decisiveness. You begin to see paths that were previously invisible. This explains why two people facing the same adverse situation achieve completely different outcomes. One remains trapped in scarcity, while the other uncovers an unexpected escape route. Studies conducted by the University of California have shown that individuals who practice affirmative visualization and daily affirmations improve mental clarity and enhance their ability to identify favorable opportunities. They exhibit greater vitality, a stronger drive, and even an increased ease in managing financial decisions. This happens because the mind, when trained to anticipate abundance, automatically aligns itself with behaviors and decisions that generate prosperity. It is as if, by transforming one's inner frequency, the intellect begins to uncover paths that were previously blocked. I myself have experienced such situations on countless occasions. There were times when, even surrounded by potential, I simply couldn't see a solution. It felt as though everything was in darkness. However, once I began the daily practice of visualization exercises, setting goals and repeating affirmations of abundance, a profound transformation took place within me. Suddenly, ideas emerged, people I had lost touch with reconnected, and stalled projects gained momentum. It was not by chance. It was a shift in my inner alignment that enabled me to perceive what had always been around me. It is intriguing to observe how most people persist in the belief that life is defined by external factors, the financial climate, the government, their employer, or a lack of opportunities. But if that premise were true, everyone living in the same nation, under identical circumstances, would be destined for an identical future. However, reality differs. Some individuals thrive, while others falter. The distinction lies not in the context, but in how each person resonates with and comprehends what they observe. How many times have you heard the story of someone who lost their job and interpreted it as the end of everything? That individual plunged into fear, and that fear led to additional obstacles and limitations. Now, consider someone who lost the same position but chose to view it as an opportunity to embark on something new. That person launched a business, changed their career path, and restructured their professional journey. The disparity lay in their energetic state. The first person radiated scarcity, while the second exuded confidence. Science calls this phenomenon priming, a psychological preparation that leads you to interpret reality according to your expectations. If you anticipate adversity, your cerebral cortex will amplify every sign of an obstacle. If you expect abundance, it will highlight the opportunities that were always there. This has a significant impact because it shows that it is not about naively believing in something supernatural, but rather about aligning your psychological and emotional state with what you wish to experience. Consider for a moment, how many opportunities have you already let slip merely by radiating fear? How many doors were open, yet you didn't walk through them, held back by uncertainty? And on how many occasions did you make hasty choices, driven by impatience, only to realize later that if you had waited just a little longer, the situation would have unfolded quite differently? The reality is that your frequency determines the quality of your options. And your decisions dictate the value of your outcomes. If your desire is to prosper, it is crucial to cultivate the habit of positioning your mind in a state of growth, not retraction. This can be achieved through simple routines, daily writing sentences that reflect your desired reality, mentally visualizing what you aspire to achieve, and feeling as though it has already been accomplished. These exercises, often overlooked by many, are actually tools that shape the brain and the subconscious mind to sustain a new alignment. And when this renewed frequency becomes dominant, life responds with absolute precision. Capital, opportunities, and the right people don't appear by force, they emerge because you become congruent with them. It is not about believing only after seeing success. It is a matter of having faith beforehand, of feeling it in advance, of aligning yourself in anticipation. Because, by changing your resonance, you inevitably change your circumstances. One of the most deeply ingrained misconceptions that society has repeated for countless ages is the belief that the harder you work, the more financial resources you will acquire. This is a dangerous fallacy that traps countless people. Just look around. How many individuals do you know who wake up before sunrise, work late into the night, put in extra hours, forego weekly rests, and yet remain in debt, with the continuous feeling that money is never enough? And concurrently, how many have you observed who seem to work less, enjoy greater autonomy, and yet live in abundance? What distinguishes these two groups is not shrewdness, nor diligence, nor even luck. It is perspective. It is frequency. I myself believed in this misconception for a long time. I dedicated many years believing that if I just worked hard enough, if I gave my all, financial success would materialize. However, what I reaped was discouragement, exhaustion, and a life that moved in repetitive cycles. Until I assimilated a harsh reality, physical effort does not guarantee fortune. What ensures prosperity is the alignment of your psyche with the energy of abundance. You can swim against the current your entire life, but you will never make progress if you do not change the direction of your inner drive. Incessant struggle only generates more conflict. Scarcity produces more deprivation. The frequency of fear attracts more scenarios that confirm that fear. This is the subtle pattern that holds so many individuals back. They assume they need to work harder, study more, and sacrifice more, when in fact, they are only reinforcing the vibrational archetype of absence. It is for this reason that countless people reach the end of their journey exhausted, devoid of energy, time, and resources. They followed a recipe that never proved effective. On one occasion, while speaking with a remarkable entrepreneur who expanded his wealth with each passing cycle, I asked about his secret. The reply was so simple it sounded unbelievable: "I don't work hard to get money. I visualize to attract wealth." This statement completely transformed my perception. He wasn't referring to physical exertion, but rather to an alignment of the mind. While most people busy themselves trying to force financial manifestation, he simply aligned with the frequency of prosperity. And ideas, connections, and opportunities flowed to him. This is the distinction between fighting the current and flowing with it. Science has already demonstrated that your emotional landscape directly impacts how your brain processes information. When you are in a state of scarcity, your cerebral cortex envisions fewer solutions and fewer alternatives. You become oblivious to opportunities. Conversely, when you are in a state of security and abundance, your perception expands. You see pathways that previously seemed sealed off. Therefore, it is not about the amount of time you dedicate to an activity, but rather about the quality of the energy you invest in your journey. Imagine someone who worked for several decades in a corporation, sacrificing their well-being, family time, and leisure. Many of these professionals reach retirement with no savings, relying on meager subsidies for their sustenance. In contrast, consider individuals who started from scratch but had the courage to transform their perspective. People who allowed themselves the freedom to believe they could generate abundance through their ideas, skills, and discernment. They did not necessarily dedicate more time, but they operated differently, resonating with abundance, and that is what created the difference. The truth is that the world does not reward only those who strive diligently. The universe rewards those who align themselves with what they desire. Effort devoid of alignment is like running on a treadmill. You get tired, but you stay in the same place. However, when you adjust your frequency, every movement you make has an amplifying effect. Opportunities emerge, collaborations materialize, and ideas flourish. You attract, instead of merely fighting. This is the fundamental difference between those who dedicate their lives to incessant struggle and those who achieve financial independence. It is not how intensely you work, it is how you resonate. If you persist in the belief that abundance will only come through sweat and sacrifice, you will remain captive in the same pattern of scarcity. However, if you choose to change your alignment, life will begin to reveal to you that there is a considerably smoother, more abundant, and spontaneous path. And that path begins the moment you choose to discard the notion of perpetual struggle and embrace the reality that prosperity is, above all, a state of your perception. Absolutely nothing changes externally until you transform internally. It is a realization that can seem uncomfortable, as the tendency is to assume that the obstacle always lies with management, with one's superior, with the economic climate, or with the specifics. The truth is that the outcomes you're currently experiencing are merely reflections of the frequency you've been maintaining over time. If you radiate fear, uncertainty, and scarcity, life reciprocates by presenting you with more of the same. If you emanate conviction, abundance, and self-worth, situations begin to align to support this renewed vitality. It's straightforward, yet far from trivial, as it demands the courage to take full responsibility for your own reality. I grasped the profound weight this decision carries. When I found myself stuck in unfulfilling jobs, feeling adrift with no future, burdened by debt, and doubting my own abilities, the notion that the solution would spring from within, rather than from external sources, felt utterly beyond reach. Yet, it was precisely at that nadir of distress that a crucial understanding dawned on me. By waiting for an external shift, I would remain destined to live out the same existence. And with that epiphany, my entire outlook began to transform. I resolved that I would no longer accept scarcity as my inherent state. I chose to emanate a distinct vibration, even if the world around me remained unchanged. The shift manifested almost instantly. Not through some sudden cosmic blessing, but because I began to perceive opportunities that had always been present, yet hidden from my previous understanding. It's akin to tuning a radio. If your dial is off, no matter how vigorously you turn the selector, the right song will never be heard. But once you finally locate the exact station, the harmony was there all along, simply waiting for your connection. This applies precisely to your finances, your relationships, and your physical well-being. Abundance is perpetually available, but it only becomes apparent when you choose to harmonize your energy with it. And here is the fundamental premise: this decision is entirely your own. No one needs to grant you permission to flourish. No one needs to endorse your choice for a life of abundance. There's no need to wait for others to declare that the time is right. The opportune moment is the present. Because with every postponement, you solidify in your subconscious the belief that you are not capable, that you are undeserving, that scarcity still defines your truth. Grasp the power of this: a single verdict shifts the entire landscape. By deciding to live in prosperity, your body reacts with renewed vitality, your voice gains an unprecedented depth, and your actions begin to exude confidence. And the external environment, inevitably, adjusts. You might even question this dynamic, but it already unfolds in your life every single day. Your current living situation serves as irrefutable proof. It accurately mirrors what you have placed your faith in, experienced, and radiated. Therefore, the question isn't about its effectiveness, but rather whether you will finally choose to broadcast on a new frequency. Life doesn't wait. Every single day you remain immersed in the same routine of thoughts and feelings represents a day subtracted from enjoying the autonomy, serenity, and choices that are rightfully yours. For a brief moment, envision what it would be like to wake up tomorrow already imbued with a sense of abundance, even before opening your eyes. Picture yourself making choices driven by the conviction that success is unquestionable. Imagine facing the future not with apprehension, but with fervent anticipation. This reality is not far off. It becomes accessible the precise moment you make your unwavering decision. So, understand this: you don't need a flawless strategy, you don't need to intensify your efforts, and you don't need to wait for external factors to align before you achieve success. You require only a solid, clear deliberation. The determination to no longer resonate with scarcity. The decision to no longer entertain thoughts that confine you. The resolution to finally embrace your true essence, an individual who is fortunate, opulent, and unhindered. The exact moment this decision is genuinely conceived, not just by the intellect, but with your feelings and spirit, your frequency shifts, and when your frequency shifts, the entire cosmos bends in your favor. There's a particularity that few discern when we approach opulence: the way you interact with appreciation. Most assume that expressing gratitude is an action subsequent to receiving, a mere sign of courtesy or thankfulness. However, the reality is that gratitude constitutes the energy that precedes abundance. It is the bedrock that paves the way for financial resources to flow in your direction. By limiting your gratitude only to what you already possess, you restrict your vibrational tuning to the present moment. But when you begin to express thanks for what you desire as if it were already a concrete reality, you establish a vibrational field of such magnitude that it attracts precisely the object of your gratitude. I recall vividly a time when I was drowning in debt, seeing no alternatives, overwhelmed by the oppressive feeling that monetary values would never be sufficient. My initial inclination was to complain, to feel anger, to ask, why me? Until I understood that each time I acted that way, I merely intensified the vibration of scarcity. So, even with outstanding financial obligations, I began to practice gratitude for elements still absent from my life. I expressed appreciation for resources on their way, for opportunities that hadn't yet materialized, for the economic independence my soul yearned for. Initially, it sounded insane, it felt like mere self-suggestion. Yet, as time went on, something shifted. Not only did I feel lighter, but I also started noticing the opening of new pathways. It was as if, by anticipating gratitude, I was sealing an imperceptible pact with the cosmic whole. Investigations in the field of positive psychology corroborate this effect. Studies reveal that individuals who cultivate a gratitude journal develop a greater capacity for resilience, a heightened sense of hope, and even superior physical well-being. And all these factors directly influence your connection with material possessions, because when you are in a state of appreciation, your intellect expands its perception of possibilities. You visualize solutions, detect opportunities, and attract individuals who resonate with that same energetic current. Appreciation is an inherent attractor of prosperity. How many times have you uttered phrases like, "When my income increases, I'll be grateful," or "When my life improves, then I'll give thanks"? That is the misconception. There is no need to await the outcome to cultivate appreciation. It is imperative to feel it in the present, for it is this very feeling that generates the outcome. By choosing to manifest gratitude today, even if no alteration is perceptible, you initiate the emission of abundance. And this tuning, undeniably, attracts conditions, individuals, and occasions that corroborate what you have acknowledged. Therefore, conduct a simple experiment. Daily, before resting, record 3 elements for which you feel recognition, including what you do not yet possess, but yearn to attract. Write as if it already constituted a truth. Feel deep within you that this gratitude is authentic. It could be freedom from worrying about bills, it could be a welcoming home, it could be the serenity of having surplus funds in your bank account. If you commit to this routine for a few weeks, you will notice that your mental perception transforms, your emotional reactions shift, and, astonishingly, your life also begins to change. For gratitude is not merely a feeling, it is a rhythm. And by resonating at that rhythm, you invariably attract what aligns with it. Now, contemplate this. What would happen if, instead of emanating complaints, fear, or deprivation, you chose to radiate appreciation daily? What would occur if you began to behave, express, and feel like an individual who already enjoys abundance? The answer is straightforward: your life would harmonize with that abundance. For gratitude is not merely a signal, it is one of the most potent tools to reshape your mental perspective and unlock the pathways to prosperity. With every new resolution you adopt, every idea you choose to nurture, you are charting the course of your financial and existential journey. And it is precisely for this reason that this material should not remain restricted to you. Reflect on a particular individual, someone you know could benefit from these elucidations, and share this audiovisual material with that person. It might be exactly the communication they need to absorb to completely transform their perception of money and well-being. I express my profound gratitude for your presence here with me, for dedicating your time to expanding your understanding, and I want you to know that I am already conceiving something even more impactful for your appreciation. I look forward to your presence in the next recording.